We are live with Glenn Poulos. And Glenn, we were just saying this is a little strange because usually everyone who we have on the podcast, we know in some capacity. I don't know you too well, but your story was so intriguing that we had to bring you on.
Right. Thank
because
you.
you've been up to some serious shit. in the best way possible. So I don't even really know kind of where to begin. Maybe we start wherever you want, because we were just saying how you're kind of exiting your second you're still there, but you're kind of exiting a second company now.
Correct. Yeah.
You're in real estate. You're in a bunch of other stuff that we'll get to.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start? Let me ask you this. How does someone get to the point in their lives where they're exiting their second company?
Good question. The second exit was first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Really happy to be here.
Cool.
And really grateful for everything that I've gotten from your guys' services. And I'll speak about it as we go along. There's an endless list of things that I've learned from you guys, and I'll touch on them. And I really want to thank you guys for bringing all that to me. So.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So 30 years ago, when I was, because I'm turning 60, right? So 30 years ago.
So you're young. So 40 years at least 40 years to go. With today's medicine, you're 40
I
years.
hope
You're
so.
40 years.
Yeah. I heard a guy on the radio the other day saying he's not leaving anything to his kids, and they can earn it. And I'm thinking, well, if I had 40 years, I'd probably spend it all too. But
that's a lot of time. 40 years. That's a lot of time.
Yeah. But so 30 years ago, I had this passion that I wanted to start a company before I was 30. And so I had been in sales for 5 years, working for a company selling electronic instruments. So precision measuring instruments. If you think of when you're in the hospital, you see all these instruments with signals on them and measuring your oxygen, all those waves and everything. We sell the equivalent of that for electronic engineers. So electronic test and measuring instruments, right? And every engineering school you've ever been to has, millions of dollars of instruments, and, we sell it to the government, the military. And I had worked for a company from 85 to about 91, and coming up on 92, which I was born in 62, 92 was going to turn 30. I brought an idea, this crazy idea for this new technology called a cell phone. And I had explained to the owners of the company, there were 4 of them, that there was this new technology and it would evolve to become what is called millimeter wave technology, wave technology, which is now very ubiquitous in 5G, right? 5G is all about the millimeter wave frequencies. And sorry to get a bit technical, but it's relevant. And the owner of the guys, I said, look, I'm going to take some of your vendors that you're not selling very much of, and I'm going to combine them with these other vendors, and we're going to target companies in the mobility space, right? Cell phones, newfangled thing, the old
classic,
right?
Yeah, classic and old guy screaming at the sky, waving
president,
his fist.
Yeah, so the president, I think part of this story might be in the book, but the president said, bring me a plan on how you would do that. And unfortunately, I'm going to probably show you a plan on how it's not going to work. And I said, okay, let me do that. And so the next day I came in and I gave him my resignation. And I just basically quit, right? And this is probably not a quality.
This is at the age of 30.
Yeah, 29.99, whatever.
Okay,
right?
and why was 30 such a marker for you?
Because I wanted to say I started my company before I hit 30, right?
So it was just that. You just put
pure
this arbitrary
rights.
number.
Yeah.
I started a company before 30.
Before 30.
Good for you.
So
okay.
at 29 point something.
Yeah.
It
sounds like you
right?
cut it pretty close, Glenn.
Yeah, I did. And but fortunately, I started in October 1991, and I turned 30 in May of 1992. So 6 months to spare. And they were kind of shocked, and they fighting to keep me back. But I really never looked back. And we started building this company called Wave Technologies. And I had a couple partners. Later, one of the partners left, and my brother came in. And we grew the company to mid 8 figures. It was a thriving business. And this is where it's a lot less interesting than what's happened in a few months ago with my new business. But we sold the company to a public company. And so by a means of a reverse takeover type deal, I became a very large shareholder in this public company. And at the time of the deal, it was quite attractive. Like, I became a multimillionaire at that point about 17 years ago. But it was all in shares, and I didn't get a lot of money in cash, right? And I was naive, but really good at building the business and running the business, customers, sales, all that stuff. But I was really naive in terms of the real cutthroat world of the public equity markets. And
because so this is now you're 43 approximately.
Yeah.
And the shares weren't liquid to you at the moment that that reverse takeover.
I was locked in because I was an insider as well. I could only sell 1% every 90 days.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was really locked in. Not that they weren't liquid. They were liquid to other people. And one of the partners exited. He got to sell like a chunk, 20% or something, because he was leaving the business. But I had to stay, and I did. And they owned a bunch of cell phone stores across Canada. They had a really good public image. And at the time, this public company was a household name. Like, people would know the name. And but we made a very bad choice of partners, and so much so. This is really quite ironic, but after we sold the business, on the day we signed the deal, our line of credit was at zero, and we had lots of money in the bank. All our vendors were paid up, and I drove from Scotiabank in Burnham Thorpe and Highway 10 in Mississauga back to my office after signing a stack of paper. DocuSign didn't exist, right? Maybe it existed, but we didn't use it.
Yeah.
And and I signed this huge stack of papers, a foot high. And by the time I got out of that chair and drove back to Mill Creek in Mississauga to our office, can I swear on this?
Yeah.
So
I know that exact location that you drove back to.
The banker called me and said, "What the fuck?"
Why?
And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Your line of credit is maxed." And of course, I had just gotten the deed, all the guarantees for the off, because I did at least get the guarantee off. But the line was at zero. By the time I got home, it was at $2 million.
And when you say the guarantee off, the personal guarantee.
The personal guarantee was removed.
Okay.
So I wasn't liable personally for the money anymore. But we had gone from zero use of the line of credit that day to fully maxing it, somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million of room, and they maxed it in an hour, and or the time it takes to drive from Mississauga to Mississauga.
So were they just acquiring you to get access to some of this liquid cash?
So yeah, and I mean, I don't know all their the undercurrents of their problems but they had some fancy companies that were doing well, that looked good to the markets, and their stock was doing well.
Oh, that's right. You said it was public. Yeah.
But they had a bunch of company mistakes that, I was never really made privy to, that kind of was dragging, putting a need for cash. And so they were pulling cash out of the cell phone stores and the other public companies. And they just basically just nailed us for every penny we had on the first day.
Sounds like the first hour of the first day.
And so we basically started stretching our vendors from that point on.
Oh, geez. And these are relationships that you had.
Oh, yeah. They're all
valued you and were loyal to you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I flew all over North America signing up these vendors. They're from around the world, and our reputation personally was on the line with them, and we stopped paying them. And then they started stretching our shipments so that our customers were then getting mad. And basically 15 years to the day, we went into receivership. And so the public company didn't go bankrupt.
2 years later.
2 years, yeah. It was about 18 months, I guess it took from the beginning to the end.
Wow.
And and we went into receivership. They did not bankrupt. The public company did not get bankrupt. But we all lost our jobs, 100 people. And basically snap overnight, we're all out of jobs. And they continue to sort of thrive and for some time. I
thought you were going to say finagle.
Finagle. Actually, they finagled their way for a while. They did. And they ran the cell phone stores for a while, but they ended up somehow being able folded out of the business. I don't know how. I was long gone by then. And then ultimately, I think the company closed down. But the shares went from like $1 something to like a penny or sub a penny. And so, I was this newfound millionaire, right? But of course it was all locked up, so I wasn't really spending it. So I wasn't living like a millionaire, and I wasn't even thinking like a millionaire or anything like that.
Sure, but technically you were.
But I was a multi-millionaire, right? And all I'd really gotten out of it was maybe $100K or something. I bought a Mazda RX-8.
Oh, nice. Those are beautiful cars.
Yeah. And I took it to, I think it's RPM Motorsports in out in Kitchener-Waterloo, and they put like 20 or 30 grand more into the car.
Nice.
It was so nice.
Okay.
Right? And
So
that was all I got out of it, really.
Oh,
And in the end, the shares basically became worthless. So I lost my job, and I literally was faced with having to either, fill out a resume and get a job, right? Because I was 40.
Because you're 40.
I had kids, wife, the whole 9 yards. And I had to, I was actually divorced at the time, and I had child support and all that stuff. And I either had to get a job or like start over, right? And so the way I like to tell the story is I started with my first name, G. My last name was Poulos, P, GP, right? And then I bought a vowel, A, Gap. And I started with Gap Wireless. Okay, it was done. It was named within like the first 5 minminutes.
Got it. So that's how you came up with Gap Wireless.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I had the first few vendors that I wanted to approach. Then one of my ex-employees at the old business actually approached me, and to make a long story short, we got together and we became business partners.
Awesome.
And he came in actually as the president. I was the vice president, and I know all about the operations and all and he was really,
And this was doing the same thing, supplying
identical.
Okay.
Yeah, the exact same thing.
Okay.
Supplying wireless infrastructure and test and measurement equipment to the wireless industry, the mobile wireless. Yeah. So basically the cellular industry, right? That'll never take off, by the way.
Yeah.
No one will ever want a cell phone.
So I want to continue the story at this point, but I do want to skip back for 1 second, if you'll allow me. The boss that you were speaking to
said it'll never work
when you were 30. What is it that you saw that he didn't see? You just saw, because at that time, I think I remember when my father was running a construction company, got his first cell phone. I feel like it was like around that time. I don't know, within a few years of this time anyway. And the thing, I feel like one was like with a briefcase,
right,
or something.
Yeah, the brick. There was the brick.
And then there was like the Motorola thing that was like carrying a freaking
the bag.
brick.
The bag.
Yeah.
The bag phone and the...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. There was like a bag.
There was the one that was carried with the handle.
I forgot about that one. Yeah, that one.
Then the brick.
Yes, then the brick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And these were like huge things. And it seemed to me that you were you were able to see this evolving trend. Like, what did you see that somebody else who was they weren't in this industry because it was just emerging, but they had visibility into this industry if they wanted to look. What did you see? I don't get it.
The simple answer is that I was just totally geeked out on wireless stuff, right?
Okay, so you had an information advantage.
And I'm not the most technical person in the company ever. I've never been the most technical. I'm technical enough to be super dangerous, and most people would think that I'm very technical, but really I'm not, right? Well, some of my partner is very bright technically now, but I'm really good at combining technical with selling, with relationship management and people skills and all that.
Got it.
In order to
nice mix.
In order to sell.
But then your geeking out on this gave you the information advantage that he didn't have.
Yeah, and I just loved it. And in the book I talk about greed-based learning, which we can talk about. And they're like, "What the heck is that?" Right?
Yeah,
and,
sounds motivational though, because if you see greed, it's just like human nature.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on over here?
People at work are like, "How am I ever going to learn that?" And I'm like, don't worry, GBL will kick in and you'll learn it no problem, right? GBL. Greed-based learning. Right.
It is a sort of learning that works.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
And I can relate it to everything you guys are doing here in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Well, sure. It just reminds me of my Bitcoin rabbit hole because I'm like,
that's GBL.
Wait a second here. What's going on? And you do the super deep dive where you're like getting into this stuff. I run a node. There's a full Bitcoin node sitting here. I would have never thought that I'm having a full Bitcoin node sitting at the table here. Right?
Yeah, I'm sure a couple years ago, one day someone's talking to you and you don't know anything. And the next day you're teaching people how to install MetaMask wallets.
Totally.
Yeah, securing it with a hardware key and don't lose your key.
Yeah.
All that, right? And
totally.
And people are like, how do you know this?
Yeah. Get
greed-based learning.
Yeah, greed-based learning. Okay, I like it. I'm not, you know what? I'm not sure I like it, but I know it's kind of the truth. You know what I mean? It's like you don't want to admit that that's what it is, but it's human nature.
That's
it's like, wait a second here. It's what led us down the real estate path too. Anyway,
sure.
But so keep going. Bring us back up to speed then. So this gentleman's the president. You're the vice president.
Yeah. We started the company, and I had years back. I started collecting the stories that are in the book, and I called them factors. And I in the beginning, I named them after the real people with their real name. And most of them were lessons about don't make that mistake, right? A lot of my book is like the mistakes not to make, not here's a recipe to how go make a sales call, right? And there's some interesting, the chapters are kind of strange. It's like, what does this mean, right? $10 million in diamonds, and I will tell you some of those stories. But so I started writing them down in a leather book years back, and then I was years ago I got invited to do some seminars and speaking about it, and so I had to hone some of the stories into more like a speech, right? And which I did, and then started people like, oh, you should write a book, right? And this was like 20 years ago, and so I tried a while back then, and I wasn't very successful at it, and but I kept marking down the stories, right, over the years. I kept the book with me, and I don't have it with me at all times now, but I used to carry it with me at all times in my briefcase or backpack, what have you. And every time someone would do something weird or good or bad, I would write it down. I would name it after them and call it the Tony Martin factor. Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then totally. I read a little bit about what it was about.
Yeah.
And I would save it because I said one day I'm going to write.
Yeah, those
book,
are the
right?
best stories. Yeah.
So. But essentially, I kind of digress from the business. What I had learned, I'd learned a bunch of things about the company after it became public and it was much bigger. There's 100 people that I didn't quite agree with, but I was in the sales, primarily in the sales part of the company, right? I'm not a CFO. I mean, I was driving sales relationships and stuff, right? And I wanted to change the way we handled some things, and I really couldn't make the changes and stuff, right? And I said, if I ever do it again, I'm going to do it differently, right? And so I knew what I wanted in a company, and I felt that I'd lost control in the last one, and then I'd become part of a public entity. I wasn't C-level, and then ultimately I lost my life savings and all that stuff. And so I started Gap Wireless with my business partner with an eye on doing everything the way I wanted to do it. And so there were myself and my partner. We hired a salesman out west, and we had a lady that came from the old business to help with the admin, right? And filling out quotes and orders
and what does it mean the way you wanted to do it? I assume you had a set of principles or rules that you followed.
Yeah, and I mean just vaguely. I mean, or just it's like always answer the phone, right? Like so. And
because you don't know what the opportunity is on the other side.
Yeah, so like try not to put people into a cycle of voicemail and
like that. Yes, makes sense.
Auto attendant, whatever. Always have someone pick up the phone, right? I will admit that 12, 13 years later, when we got to a certain amount of size, we actually did have to have the phone immediately picked up, but we have a fail safe. So they always can talk to a person, right? Like they can pick their one for sales, two for accounting, because a lot of times they're calling for an invoice or the basic stuff, and right. And so having in the modern age, it's not completely productive to have one person just answering the phone, right? Mm-hmm. But when they keep going 000, it comes to me, and I pick up the phone and then they say, oh, blah blah blah, this and that, and they start, and then I'm like, well, how can I help you? What do you need? And then they're like, oh. Thank you for picking up the phone or something like that. And then I'm like, well, you're talking to the owner, so I'm probably going to be able to solve your problem too. They're like, oh awesome. My God, you're the owner and you picked up the call. And
very cool.
That's just a minor thing. The way we control pricing and stuff, which, we would be akin to, imagine you had 100 realtors working for you and they were all going out and signing up listings, and they'd bring them all back and they'd say, hey, Tom, here's all the listings. I'm selling this one for $689. And you're like, wait a minute. We should have listed that for $699, or, we should have held offers until next Thursday. And
got it. So you had a standard.
And so we pulled in, we pulled the margin control back to the business, and we created a centralized quoting model. And a lot of people in the all the salesmen would make up different margins, right? It's a minor thing, like,
sales
but it's
for salespeople. Those damn sales. I say that as a salesperson.
And the next part's so obvious is, like, imagine like Jack, why is his deals always low margin? And Sally's always high margin.
It's so true.
Always.
Yeah, always.
Always.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And,
Why are this person's deals always a disaster that blow up and are headaches, and this person just signs the best deals all the time?
Yeah. And again, I have a chapter in the book called Freedom Begins with No, which talks about these, being beat up on pricing and stuff, in front of the customer, and that oftentimes the jack of the world, that's, oh, I want a better price and this and that. And they're like, oh, let me talk to my manager, even though they know full well they're already buying at the bottom of where they can be.
Yeah.
But Sally would just say, well, knowing where you're at in your cycle, sir, I came in with our best price. The lead time is actually getting worse. And so I can only hold the delivery if we place an order this week. And I've already come in with my best price. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to go back and get you any better pricing. That's a no, right? And she can go home at night knowing she's done. This guy here, Jack,
going back,
he's got to go back to the boss and say, oh my God, sure, we can't do anything more. And, and so his free. There's no freedom for him, and he has to worry about it at night. Right. That kind of a lesson, right?
Yeah.
So we are super easy to do business with at my company, and that's what we prided on. And we provide technically creative solutions to customer problems. A lot of our competitors, they're good companies, no question, but they're more about, here's your price, here's your delivery, this is what we sell. But we're about finding creative solutions to customer problems. So we'll go in and find advanced technology from around the world, and we'll work to adapt it to your network or to your measurement needs, to whatever it is. And over time, that's built to be a formidable size business. And people say, we just love dealing with Gap Wireless. Like, you're just so easy to do business with. And so that's one of our, one of the core principles that we've always stuck to
Makes sense.
in running the company, right?
People do business with people they like.
Yeah.
I always used to get into these different debates with different sales environments that I've been in over the years, where I've tried to kind of explain, not that we're perfect at it here by any means, but it's like people like doing business with people they know, like, and trust. Right. And if you put up a corporate shield all the time and you're trying to pretend you're a bigger company than you are, or you stand behind these brands or logos or mission statements that everyone knows are just bullshit, all people really want are to hear your voice, know that you're going to answer the phone like you did. Right. And even if you can't fix the problem, you're going to do your best to try to fix it. Right. And if people sense that from you, that's really all everybody wants. Yeah. And, I just remember trying to do some sales back when I was much younger, I guess in my late 20s, and trying to use my personality and in a way to approach CIOs and CTOs. I was selling into Chicago at the time. Right. And it kind of worked, as opposed to just hiding behind a big tech name. I could penetrate into different organizations as the salesperson, right, just by relating to what their problems were, instead of just trying to sell them some crap by a certain date, and then using my personality just to be real about it, right, and not like kind of make this a big corporate dog and pony show. Yeah. And it really, for me anyway, it worked. Yeah. It just, they felt, I think, I wasn't bullshitting them. Then they didn't bullshit me, and we did a lot of business. So that's cool. That's cool to hear the way you did that.
There's a good, what you say about CIOs and CEOs or whatever. There's a good story in the book called Shit Flows Downhill, where I tell the story about the salesman like yourself and myself, where I would call the CEO, I'm selling the instrument side of the business. We also sell antennas and other things, but I talk to them about these measuring instruments, and when he'd realize I was a salesman, he'd say like, "Oh, that's not my department" or whatever. And I say, "Look, I've been saving guys this amount of money, or we've been getting this amount of throughput from customers just like you. You can either hang up on me or give me 30 seconds, and then
good for you.
And that kind of a thing. And usually, okay, fine, you get your 30 seconds, right? And then I'd say, look, so who should I talk to, right? And who's in charge of engineering, who's in charge of production or whatever, and say, look, Bob's the vice president of engineering, right? And so, thanks, click, right? Bob, I'm having a great chat with the CEO.
Yeah. Right there, you're a step further for sure. Right? Just that one line. Yeah.
He really thinks we need to talk, right? And the VP's like, I'm too busy for that. Call Jack, the production manager, right? Okay, well, I've been working really closely with Bob, the VP, and George, the CEO, and they really, really think we need to get some instruments in here on trial. We've been, we've been improving throughputs
Getting
by
flashbacks just listening
20%,
to you.
right?
Yeah.
And the good thing about it is, right, in that whole concept of shit flows downhill, right, is that imagine that I deliver, an instrument, $100,000 instrument. And there's all sorts of other rules I teach in the book about, staying on top of those things so that they're actually being used. But, I can call the CEO and I can say, look, the instrument's here on trial. It is actually producing 20% faster measurements than you were getting before. Can you come down for 2 minutes and look at it? No, but I'll send the VP guy, right? Or whatever, right? And then, because I've already talked to him once, right? Mm-hmm. And then I get to the point where the guys like it or whatever. And then I can call the CEO and I say, look, this is going to be $100,000 instrument. I'm sure you're signing off on it. Like, what do I need to worry about? I'm not even wasting my time on it.
I think that came from just your understanding of your field was deep. Like, I know you're saying you're not super technical,
right?
But your ability to have those types of conversations with confidence comes from your knowledge of what you're selling.
Right.
Whereas if you just step into a sales role and you have no clue really what you're selling, you just can't have the conversations that you just had, even if they're high level. The conviction in your voice is different when you know about the product at the depth you knew it.
Yeah.
And that comes across because that allows you to push the CEO a little bit harder. Whereas if you're a sales guy who doesn't know the product at all and you get the CEO on the phone, you're just shitting your pants, right? Exactly. You have nothing to say.
Yeah.
So it was your information. And that's where I just think in life, an information advantage serves you in all things, in investing, in sales, like you just showed right there. Yeah. And it's interesting to hear your story. Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry.
No, it's
Keep
okay.
going. Keep going.
And I used that whole greed-based learning GBL thing. That's how I got to the.
I love. I almost hate that I love that one because it's so accurate. Yeah. I don't want to admit that I love that one, but it's really good.
The way the story goes, right, is, again, we're selling these expensive things. I don't know anything about them, right? But I do know enough to know that these 5 customers, and the vendors would come to town. They'd want to present to they'd want us to go on sales calls, right? That's kind of the world I work in. We represent companies from around the world. They send in their FAEs, their application engineers, and their sales guys, and their regional managers, and they want to come and visit our top customers. And so I'd pick the guy up from the hotel in the morning, have breakfast with him, and I'd say, look, what are the top 5 things that are important in this analyzer, right? The guy would tell me the top 5 things, and I'd forget 4 of them by the time I got to the customer, right? But I'd say, hey, I want to introduce you to George. He's the FAE from whatever, Rockwell Technologies or something like that, right? And they got a great box, and they've managed to increase the memory throughput by 20% on this instrument. And I really wanted you to spend a bit of time with them to learn a bit more about it. Then he'd tell more, and then he'd tell the second, third, fourth one. And I remember the second one on the next call. I'd introduce him, and I'd drop the next 2 bombs, right? And by the end of the day, I knew all 5. And he's like, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, you know the product better than I do. And all I knew was the sort of surface level, enough to get the customer interested, because I'm never going to be the FAE. Yeah. I'm always going to need that guy. But I found
in sales, that's almost enough to make you a subject matter expert, because so few salespeople will remember anything. I can't tell you how many calls where I was the technical guy to go with the sales guy.
Right.
And they would literally know nothing.
Right.
They would just put me on the phone and say, okay, Tom's here. And I'm like, I would kick into sales mode without knowing, without knowing that I was the sales guy. But I thought, oh my gosh, like I'm scrambling here to try, like, what's this guy's problem? Like, I don't even know what I'm to talk about because I don't know. So I would have to ask questions to understand.
So you become the salesman and the FAE.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so even though you're kind of laughing how you would just know those 5 points, from my experience, those were the best salespeople because they took the time to understand those 5 points.
Yeah.
And then after years of articulating them, you get really good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the guy would then, he would go out with another rep, and I was sort of Southwestern Ontario, and there were other reps in Eastern Ontario and North, Ottawa, et cetera. And then he would come back, circle back, and want to talk to the boss or whatever. And and basically what he'd end up saying was like, don't ever lose that Glenn guy. Like, he's amazing, right? But because the other guys were doing what you said. They were just standing there, literally like bouncing on the balls of their feet, trying not to fall asleep.
Yeah. Did we get the deal? Are we going to get the deal? Do you think we're going to get that deal? Like, who's the salesperson in this relationship?
Yeah. And so that's where I came up with that concept. But, so we ran the company, quite successfully. It wasn't a flawless, like, a 0 to infinity kind of graph of sales. None of them ever are, right? But we did grow fairly steadily. But because we sell wireless, what's really important to our company is 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and of course, hopefully 6G, 7G, what have you, because every time there's a G, typically there's
upgrading
what we call an overlay. Yeah. And it's an upgrade, but it's a forklift upgrade, we call it, right? You got to climb the tower, you got to take down the radios or put up a new set of radios, because you can't just put in a new firmware chip, because these radios are significantly, miles ahead of the one that's up there,
got it.
Right? Yeah, like a 3G versus 2G, et cetera.
So these guys, these companies are running multiple
technologies
at the same time.
Yeah, like they're just shutting down some of the 2G stuff now, right? Like they're making some of those announcements, and so the grandmother that has a phone from like 10 years ago, it's not
or maybe some industrial applications with different cell
technologies,
built in. Yeah, okay.
And so we would spike, right? As they were doing 2G, we would ramp to 2G, helping provide technology to build that network. Basically, things on the tower or things inside a building so that your cell phone works when you walk in. I don't know if you remember the days when you'd walk in the mall, you're talking to somebody, and the second you walk in the mall, it's gone. It's dead. You're dead, right? It's like, I'm walking indoors. I'm going to lose you. Right? You remember that? And then all of a sudden they came out with in-building technology.
Was that what it was? Okay.
Yeah. It's
like
called
a repeater of the signal of some sort?
It is actually a repeater. Okay. And so there's two kinds of technology, but we sell this DAS, distributed antenna systems. That's what the industry calls it. And so there's two kinds, one kind where you kind of like suck the signal through an antenna out from outdoors, put it through an amplifier, and just rebroadcast it indoors. Okay. Repeater technology. Yeah. And then there's a kind where you're literally bringing in the backhaul, meaning so all the when you get on the phone and you call your wife, I mean that goes through the landline and and then it goes maybe back to another cell site and out to your wife. But you bring the radio, the data in. We call it the node B, which is basically the start of the radio before it gets amplified, and you're actually sort of putting a cell site inside the mall.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Not taking the outside one and putting it inside.
Got it.
And that's used when you need higher capacity because you can bring in more. Huh. And so, and that's the biggest part of our business is selling that. So when you look up at stadiums, like at Scotiabank, I guess it's called now or whatever, you see all these white panels.
You never used to get signal at Scotia, the Air Canada Center originally. Right. I remember you would go in there, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many people in here, I can't get any signal.
When you look up now, unless you're in the platinum seats, you can't see anything from down that low. But if you're up higher, you'll look up and you'll see all these white panels, and you think, what are those? Those are all antennas for cellular.
Oh, got it. Okay. And that's why when there's 20,000 people in there, everybody can get signal now. Exactly. Everyone can update their social media and do their thing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And and so
that business then grew, and that grew to the point now where I saw that Financial Post article.
Yes, it is. So I'll jump to that. So we had found ourselves in 2019 where we had gotten into a few other sort of extraneous things. One of the things we were like I said, I was geeked out on like wireless technology, man. I was like interested like to my core in it, right? Just like I am in crypto, right? But I became like super geeked out on drones, right? On UAVs, geez. Right? Yeah. Like DJI drones. And,
awesome.
The kinds, right? And I was just
Nick was just flying one in the office. We were all laughing at him. Yeah.
I think you might have had that on, or
I think we put it on
video, right?
We did, yeah. I think we did. That's right. I think because it came to my face and I tried to punch it.
My wife says to me, "Oh, they've clearly never been to Gap Wireless because I did that."
Oh, really?
But it wasn't with a drone like that. It was a Phantom 3, or it was with and it was, you can't do that with it. And I was, and my business partner was like, oh man, I don't think you should be doing that, Glenn. And I kind of lost control of it. It crashed into the wall, took out the drywall, And
so right around the corner here, I think we have one of those. I think Nick just got it. I think it's a DJI brand or whatever that. Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah. They're amazing. Now they're amazing. The way they just hover in place there.
Yeah, and you can and they'll back up and.
Yeah. Someone was just telling me in the Canadian military and police force, they have like small car size ones now that will fly up. Apparently, in the whole Ottawa protest thing, they were flying these things up there. But someone was telling me they were like literally the size of like a desk or a small. Could they be that big
Yes,
now?
they can. Absolutely. And one of the things we ended up getting out of the drones because it was really cutthroat, and the difference.
It was fun though.
It was super fun. Yeah, we all have drones now, but which is really, it was like my partner. He was massively geeked out on them as well, right? We're like, how can we like get free drones from work and not pay for it? Not have the accounting lady ask what we're buying.
I totally get it. Yeah,
right. And so we said, let's start a division, right? And we did, and it went well for a while, right? But the problem is that the line between a consumer sale of a drone and a business-to-business sale of a drone is very fine, right? Because it bridges this weird gap, right? Where the guy, he's cool, he likes, he has a Phantom 3 for home, which he got on Amazon or at Best Buy, and now you're trying to sell him this other drone at work, and it's 10 times the price.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, well, and it was just really, really hard, and it wasn't up our alley of, and there were a lot of like firmware changes. We once bought a giant shipment of drones from China, from DJI, and before the boat hit the dock,
it was already
a new one. Yeah, it was already obsolete.
Yeah. Technology is crazy right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so what we did was we kept the other part of that division, which is called drone defense.
Okay.
And so we sell instruments, not unlike our other measuring instruments, that monitor the skies they measure with they have cameras, they see drones, they listen and hear drones, and they are monitoring the spectrum for the frequencies of the controllers of the drones.
This is like a scary future we're headed for.
And we sell it to companies that
are
protect
fearful
politicians.
No.
Politicians, because we have some
because a swarm of small drones coming in. You want to know about this?
Yeah, they can mount on cars. We've sold them to the jails, the prisons.
Oh my God, I never thought of that.
Yeah, and
because they could drop in all kinds of goodies into the jails.
So in Quebec, the spec we had heard was they have an interdiction daily with a drone.
No way.
Daily.
Because a drone's dropping in different supplies to the inmates.
If you've ever heard of the term cost of goods sold, right? When you're selling products, right? You buy something from a customer for $1,000, you sell it for $15. Your COGS is $1,000, right? For these nefarious dealers of drugs and whatever else.
Wow.
Their cost is daily a drone. They were losing drones daily, right? And because they wouldn't recover them back out.
Sure.
They just drop them in, crash them, whatever. They get shut out.
Who cares? They don't care if the shipment was made. The shipment was made.
Yeah.
Wow, I never thought of this. So you guys can set up this thing that almost is like acting like a radar of sorts to sense incoming drones.
Yeah, and the biggest market is airports, protecting all the perimeters of airports, because imagine those drones getting in the way of air traffic and
so someone now in these different organizations is responsible for like drone
defense.
Defense. I was about to say drone attacks, drone defense.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the funny thing is, the only thing that we can do but don't do is we don't crash the drones, and we don't take control of the drones.
But you could crash the drones?
Easy. We could,
how by scrambling some
you
of
could just push a button on it, but it's all disabled when we sell it in Canada. Because imagine if you crash the drone and then you hit a person on the ground.
Horrible. But it is possible though.
Oh, it's totally possible.
Really?
Yeah, it's already built in. And secondly, it's
How's it already built in? Wouldn't you think the vendor selling the drone would say this is preventative to any drone defense mechanisms? They can't intercept our signal.
That would be too expensive to put in that technology.
So you can somehow, a drone's incoming, your technology can somehow take over and shut it down. I know you're not doing that, but it's actually technically possible.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we would be when we're crashing the drones, we're jamming the signal, right?
Okay.
And jamming is illegal in Canada.
Illegal.
The only one that can jam the drones is the RCMP or above, right? And the military, right? No one else can run. Wow. It's illegal to own, possess, transport, or any kind of jamming technology. You see them on like Alibaba and places, these like cell phone jammers and whatever.
And what do you mean? And it would be possible to shoot them down too? Aren't they moving too quickly?
Well, you're basically what you're doing is
small.
you're hijacking the control mechanism from the guy on the ground, right? You're overtaking the controls.
Oh, okay.
And so that's why you could pilot it as well. But the problem is that the people that are overtaking it are security people. They're not pilots, and they don't have a license to fly drones.
Oh, okay.
And you need a license to fly a drone, right?
Okay.
And so that's why we don't pilot them.
Do you need a license to fly a drone?
You do, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So if we go in the parking lot,
all the real estate photos and everything,
all illegal.
Well, they probably have I don't remember the name of the new license for OFS. I can't remember the name, but it's a 4-letter thing where you're allowed, but you're supposed to file a flight plan every time you fly it. And that photographer probably did apply and get the permits to fly.
Wow, I had no idea.
But they're probably not getting flight clearance on every flight. And,
no. I think we took a drone picture of a bunch of us in the parking lot a few months ago. I don't think we had any flight license.
And so you can't fly over people, and you can't, like, there's all sorts of restrictions.
Oh, geez.
Right?
Okay.
And so it's really interesting. But we closed all that down. We also had a service division where we were installing everything on the towers. We weren't really good at that. We got rid of all that. And a shocking but true fact is that we grew to 80 people in 2019. And on one day, I basically had to drop from 80 people to 29 people.
Oh, wow.
On Black Monday.
Wow.
My wife says it's Black Thursday or whatever, but it felt like Black Monday. And
what was happening in 2019?
We had to get out of these divisions that we were not profitable. And it was leading to, we were going to have a bad year. And, we have covenants with the bank, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we have large transactions that we're doing. We're bringing in $1 million container shipments, and we need lines of credit. And because of that, you need specific
your financials need to look a certain
right?
way.
Yeah, covenants, right? And so we were
tough.
We were scared, right? And I was worried, right? And really, really worried. And so I went to my business partner and I said, look, this is what we're doing. We're getting rid of this, and this, and we're doing it all now. He's like, when's now? And I'm like, are you ready now? Because we're calling the people now.
Wow.
Like now.
Wow.
And so, and he later said, I never would have done that, what you did, right? And I never would have made that decision. I barely did it even after we decided to make it, but I never even would have made. So that was probably the hardest and best decision I ever made.
Wow.
And it hurt for all the people and what have you, but a lot of them were the service people, and we were able to place them quite quickly, almost instantly, because other companies do run service businesses profitably. We do not.
Yeah, got it.
And so there was very little carnage from it, right? Most of the people were placed quite well.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, the drone people all went to a new business that sells drones, and they're all doing well. So it's fine. And but at that moment, it was really tough, and we went from total fear for the business to massive profitability.
Yeah, and just mental relief.
Yeah.
You could sleep at night again.
Oh, yeah. And from that point, we never looked back in terms of, it wasn't that long ago, but I mean, we never looked back on the profitability side, and we changed the way we did anything. And, that was when I learned the rule, this is maybe slightly distasteful, but which was, people always ask me, like, when do you let somebody go? Right. And I said, oh, that's easy. And I say, it's the first nanosecond after the first thought that you ever have of letting them go. That's when you got to let them go, right? Yeah. And are we okay for time?
We are, yeah. I'm just
okay,
checking in. We're good.
And so we became very profitable. Throughout the years, private equity companies came and kicked the tires, but our multiples and the EBITDAs didn't look good. And, Mark and I had put our whole life into it, so we weren't going to let it go until the right moment. And there were some good companies that had come along, but the timing was wrong. And they, after the 2019 was behind us, the numbers were looking really good, but people want 3 years of history, right? And so to make a long story short on that, it's not really 3 years, but the people that came along and acquired us were smart enough. They saw how well we were performing in 2020, 2021, and 2022 that they isolated 2019 as the restructuring and took it out of the equation.
Yeah, got it.
And I believe that they're smart. We're,
that's final now.
It's final. The deal's done. Yeah. So they approached us last summer, and we started giving them numbers and talk about customers and this and that. And in the fall, they gave us an IOI, intention of interest, and we went exclusive with them, or we won't talk to anyone else. And it was a huge learning experience. Although I had sold my other company and there was due diligence and what have you, maybe this was a red flag, but it was like a few pages of due diligence. This was like 124 folders of information from the big lawyers and the KPMGs of the world, asking us detailed questions going back 5 years, every contract, all the customer stuff. We had to get all our big customers to agree. We had to get all our big vendors to agree. We had to prove all our suppositions that we were making, put them all down. And then we have to warranty them, right, going forward. So there's holdbacks and things like that on these deals, right, where they keep back, 10% for this, 10% for that.
Just got it. That's it. Because I was going to say, how do you warranty it? But they hold back.
They hold back.
Yeah, that's an easy enough. It's like a real estate deal. Yeah, there's holding back.
There's a holdback, yeah.
Got it.
And so the deal was signed and, official on around February 4th. And again, my
congrats, Glenn.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was amazing. The great thing is that I don't have to actually worry about, because when you're running your own business, you know exactly what this is like. Like, there's really not any moment of any day where there's not a black swan event that could put you out of business.
Totally.
And you'd have to call all your people in and say, by the way, you don't have a job.
We always say we're short-term paranoid about pretty much everything. Long-term optimistic. Long-term, we always know everything's always going to work out. But short-term, completely paranoid.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we got the personal guarantees taken off and all that. We have a very strong partner, and we are running we are their first Canadian acquisition, and they really didn't have a Canadian presence, and so and they're a wireless company as well. They sell almost the same technology in the US.
Oh, so they understood you.
And so so the blending, I guess, will occur over time, but we're sort of running the Canadian show for them.
And you're still involved?
Yeah, so I can't really leave for 3 to 5 years, right?
Got it.
The private equity are very good at keeping the top staff, right? Like they incentivize you to stay long term, right? Got it. And so, I'm quite happy to do that. It's a little bit different having a boss. 30 years I've been running my own thing.
Totally.
And all of a sudden I have a boss.
Yeah.
And but he's a nice guy. And
cool.
And we've always had a lot of ideas. We're sort of very passionate about our drive and vision, and we're always willing to share it. So, and they seem to be quite willing to listen. So that's a good thing, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing story from that first company to the second one. From 30 years old, starting your company. This is quite a story.
So the massive, so I kind of glossed over the absolutely show-stopping event that occurred between the two companies and up to when I signed this latest deal on February 4th. So the guy who was at the head of the public company that bought my other company, he went on to, and I don't know the full story. I couldn't write the book on it, but he fell in with a lady who had a business, not like a technology business like my business, but a family business making things that was very profitable in sort of north like in cottage country. And I can't even remember what it was, but it was a very, very profitable family business, millions of dollars of profit a year. And he fell in with the daughter, who was, of course, he's probably 10 years older than me, and she's probably, around my age or younger a little bit. But of course, it was this love affair that occurred. And he basically sort of did the same thing to her and her father, who owned the business.
No.
And he made a fatal mistake, right, on the second one, because we really didn't have a lot of recourse or anything like that. But the mistake that he made on the second one is hell hath no fury than a woman scorned.
Oh, geez.
Right? And she went completely nuts. He took over their business and he bankrupted them.
Oh my God.
The family lost everything. Like, I started over at 40 something, whatever it was. I just started my business over. I never cried about this or whatever. I basically went from unemployed to a new company in a week.
Sure.
Like, I didn't even stop, right?
That's a beautiful thing about starting your own company. Whenever you decide, you're back in business.
Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But wow, what kind of person does this?
Exactly. So they went after him, and ultimately the RCMP charged him for fraud, mail fraud, wire frauds, all these kinds of frauds. He ended up getting a one of those bracelets on your ankle. He's been on house arrest for literally years while it was going through the courts. They interviewed myself. My brother was part of the business. He interviewed my brother, and we couldn't give them any decent evidence. We just couldn't. But they had plenty of it with this lady's family and their business. And the week that I I signed the deal to sell my new company, which replaced the company that he basically bankrupted. He went to prison for 8 years.
Wow.
He was sentenced to 8 years in prison.
So this is just recently.
A few weeks ago, he went to prison.
Wow.
And he has to pay back $2.4 million or something by the time he gets out in 8 years. So he has to go back
Sounds
for
like
another.
an older gentleman now.
He is an older guy. Yeah.
Or he has to go back to jail.
Yeah. Or he has to go back for 3 more years if he doesn't pay back the family $2.4 million. And and so. I feel quite vindicated by that.
Yeah, no.
But,
Geez, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And just thinking about this other family, to all the
it's
work
awful.
they've been through for $2.4 million.
That's super heartbreaking. The father, like, he's like in his late 70s or whatever, and like he's like mentally like just devastated by what had happened. Right. The daughter, everyone in the family sort of like wrote her off as a person, like, you don't exist, right? Because they all went belly up. They lost everything. The whole family. So, do your due diligence on your partners, right? And I mean, the company we're dealing with now is like a super great A.
Good for you
one.
guys.
Yeah, they're
good.
very, very.
To go through what you went through to end up here is quite the journey, because you could have easily just kind of packed it up, started working for someone else. Not that there's anything wrong with that by any means, but might have not just felt good in your own soul.
Yeah.
Might have taken some of your spirit away, because you still have a lot of spirit in you. You can tell. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much more to add. So I'm curious then. We go on. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to sort of tie it back to, how I got involved with you guys and so, which I can't even remember, but I just tripped over.
We captured your email address somewhere and then just started spamming you forever.
Pretty much, right? Yeah. And I think it might have been, another one of your sort of cooperation that I forgot, went to one of their seminars or something, and I met you guys at it.
Okay.
And and then I signed up for the basic membership, and then I started attending I used to come to the office for classes before way back when. Yeah. And I had this like gumption, like I was running, a company, an $80 million company basically. Okay. And I had this thing that I was on the side, I was going to like renovate
real
houses, right? And it's, I honestly felt like, I'll be honest. Like I honestly felt like I wasn't a whole person until I could both run my business,
really,
and burr houses, right? I honestly didn't feel complete. Yeah. And I would see, and I met these, so many, people that I admire so much, at these seminars and stuff, that what they were doing. And I was amazed. I'm like, how did you get from like 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6? And, but
it's usually a shit show.
Yeah.
That's usually how it's done.
And and then also the, the questions about, like running out of financing at the regular banks and this and that, and then going to Butler Mortgage or those kinds of
private money,
hard monies and all that.
Money, 12%.
Yeah, it was great learning about all that, but I realized that it wasn't for me because
it's another business. Yeah, it's an entirely other business.
Yeah.
This isn't passive.
Yeah.
It's like when I started reading about real estate investing, and I was told it was passive income. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is beautiful. Like you just create this passive income stream. I didn't realize to get the passive income, you almost needed a full-time effort.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
To create the passive income, I needed a full-time effort to get there, you know?
And and you guys answered a lot of those questions about those, and or some of your members would tell stories about, how they did some of these deals and stuff. And I came to realize, like, the true benefit for me and your guys was, working with Paul, the coach, right? And I'm not sure I can pronounce his last name.
Paul
DeBruzzo,
DeBruzzo,
right? And, and the wealth of sort of tangential investment technologies you guys have brought upon me, right? And a lot of what I've done in the last number of years has been a direct result of that, right? So, I do have some rental properties in Oakville and up north in Cottage Country and stuff like that, but they're just sort of, let's call them coincidental investments, like in the sense that they just sort of happen.
Yeah. Over time, if you're in real estate, those always happen to you. You end up picking a property here or there. You don't even know how you did it.
Yeah. And of course, nowadays, if you've held on to them, you're kind of a genius.
Oh, right? You're a genius. How did you do it? How did you have the guts?
Exactly.
What brilliance you had to do that.
Yeah. And but, I came to learn about some important, as I said earlier before the show, right? I came to learn about the financing through companies like Butler Mortgage and stuff like that, which I've used on some of the properties. which I mean, to the average person, I mean, they think RBC and Scotiabank and that's it, right? I mean, they barely know about
Totally.
mortgage
That's how we
brokers.
were. We Nick and I walked away from so many deals when a banker told us, guys, you're in your 20s. We already gave you one. We shouldn't have given you the second mortgage. One was enough. The second one went out of a limb. You're done. And we would literally walk away from great deals going, I guess. Yeah. And if we had just taken 15 steps to the bank branch next door of a different bank, we probably would have got approved. Yeah. Never mind finding a mortgage broker. By the way, they're rebranding to BM Select, and they will attack me if I don't share that.
Okay.
So,
I noticed that on some of their emails.
Yeah, they're slow. They're going to big announcement coming. A big announcement. But they're going to BM Select as their branding.
So I definitely, 100% of the referrals came from you guys to them, so they owe it to you for that. And and I will give them top-notch credit for doing a great job on everything that they do. So
yeah, and it's a funny story really about them is when we started this business, we probably had a lineup of 10 mortgage brokers, and I honestly remember telling my brother that I couldn't refer anyone to Dave Butler. He's going to hate this story because I'm like, Nick, he talks so quickly. I speak quickly, okay? Right. So I'm like, he speaks so quickly. I just can't trust the guy. I don't really, know if we can do business with him. But then time and time again, he just kept delivering. And when deals were hitting when crap was hitting the fan on a deal closing, he would step up often personally to fix the deal. So much so that you couldn't deny the guy anymore. Yeah. And you were just like, okay, this guy just delivers. And so many other people who spoke a great game and more professionally, perhaps, they just failed. Yeah. And they would walk away. We would literally have, I'll never forget this because we work so hard with Rockstar members to try to, because real estate, as you know, it's difficult and there's problems. And they would just walk away from a deal. On the day of closing, we would literally get calls saying, sorry, I'm not going to be able to do the financing as I had promised your investor. Click.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh. And then we had given our good name to refer them to these people. Yeah. So you could imagine it was just horror story after horror story for 2 or 3 years. And finally, Dave, to his credit and BM Select, these guys just kept showing up. Yeah. So they're really good. And no one's perfect. And there's always problems.
So far, my work's been flawless.
Awesome.
So
good.
Yeah, really good. And cool. I got them from you guys. And I think I met them at one of your events or something, or they had a table or something. And
but you decided you had the realization you weren't going to go in to be flipping and renovating and refinancing and renting it out. It's just too much time because you were already running this business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the other one that I struggle with, and I don't know, maybe you'll have a comment on it. You probably will. Is that I totally get the concept of this, but is the joint venture. I always struggle with this because I definitely have the money, right?
Yeah.
But it's a lot of times I see the deals as 50-50, right? And mentally, I can't make that leap of faith, right? Like I can go into a much bigger syndicated deal, right? Where my little piece is like peanuts.
Sure.
Compared
but it feels good and feels right.
Yeah.
But 50-50, walk me through it because you think by putting up the money, you should be getting more than 50%.
Pretty much my greed kicks in, right? Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of guys that are going to probably want to call me and like lambaste me for that thought concept. But I can't really get over it, and I'm trying to.
Oh, I don't think there's anything to get over. I think first of all, Nick and I aren't big ourselves into joint ventures. We just don't like dealing with other people very much.
Right.
To tell you the truth, it's just more like we have done joint ventures with other investors definitely over the years, and Nick and I own many properties together as I guess joint ventures together. Yeah. But we don't like push into that ourselves. We could have over the years. Was there as many Rockstar members kind of around us? We definitely could have. It's just we wanted to sleep at night. We wanted simple, lifestyle was more important to us. And when you get into joint ventures, often money becomes an issue with people that you're not even related to.
Right.
You don't want to get into like money issues with people you're related to. And we found that Nick and I were very willing to always spend money. Like if our roof needed a repair or a foundation was leaking, we're going to spend the money immediately. That's our asset. We're going to protect it. Yeah. And we came to realize in some joint venture relationships, even if it was written on paper that we had voting control to do, a capital raise kind of we're not talking big money here, but we needed to raise some capital to fix something. It become like a little tense.
Yeah.
And we thought like, this is like an obvious thing we need to do. There's water pouring into somebody's basement. It shouldn't be tense here. And so it kind of steered us away a little bit. But we know many people have done tons of joint ventures here at Rockstar completely successfully. Yeah. It's just not been our thing. And I'll tell you on the 50-50 thing, I think it's both ways, both sides struggle, because
Yeah.
the person giving up the money thinks I should be getting more. And then the person who is doing all the legwork and dealing with the tenants or dealing with contractors and they're putting in the hours, they're like, well, it's my expertise. If they've done this for like 10 years, it's my expertise that is like making this all happen. So really, as long as I'm guaranteeing you an ROI of whatever, 8% even annually on your money, you should probably be pretty happy, and I'll just take all the rest.
Yeah.
So it's like whenever I deal with joint venture partners,
neither
no
are
one's
happy.
ever happy. No,
Yeah.
everyone
Right.
feels like they're getting screwed on both sides. But I do see them work out also over time.
For sure. And I
totally I get it. I get it.
Yeah, and I've always, want to be that know thyself kind of person, and I don't want to be the negative Nelly guy, and so I know that's why I just figured it's sort of not kind of for me, right?
Yeah.
And some of the other takeaways that I've gotten, the properties that I do have, I was starting to get years ago. You'll probably know this name, but it goes back a long way. Is that I went to a real estate seminar, I guess in the 80s, with Raymond Darren.
Oh, yeah. I know.
And he was like a kind of a real estate trainer guy. I don't know what he's doing nowadays, but and then later, he's kind of like a high pressure kind of sales.
I think that era was that way.
Yeah,
That
kind of like Tommy. Was it Tommy Woo or whatever?
Yeah. Oh, that was Tom Vu.
Tom Vu,
that was
right?
Tom Vu
Yeah,
with those infomercials.
But I got some good things. I actually bought a couple condos with his advice way back in the 80s, and zero money down. And my brother and I, we sold them later.
Cool.
We made some money and stuff like that. But he said something that I never forgot, which was, when you invest in real estate, there's two prices to pay, right? The first price is the financial price, right? And the second price is the emotional price. And there is an emotional cost to every real estate investment. And nowadays, for families trying to buy homes with multiple offers, I can't even imagine the emotional price they're paying, because most of the time they're not even winning. And
if you do win, you totally feel like you overpaid and got screwed and like
And so I was realizing recently, I was finding the real estate overwhelming, and Paul and a couple of his people are, recommended that I, go to property management, and of course the greed kicks in, right? I'm like, how much is that going to cost me? And I can go get those checks, and I don't care when the oven breaks and the oven doesn't fit in the hole.
Oh, you care when you're leaving on vacation and you get that call right before you're about to board a plane or something. Yeah.
One of the properties, the oven broke, and I just bought her a new oven and had it shipped to the house. And she calls me, she says, it doesn't fit. And I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't fit? And they're all the same.
Classic real estate.
And I went and literally didn't fit, and I had to bring a skill saw and like cut.
We had a property, the same thing. It was like this oven was some kind of magical special order from the 1970s that somehow lasted for so long, and they just don't make that size anymore.
So I went to property management, and then I also learned about the new build properties that Paul was doing, and I participated in that, quite successfully. And
so you've been up to lots of stuff. You've checked out things, thought about things,
and also the other thing. I mean, right or wrong, and I mean, I'm not a realist. Like, if you ask me about 5G, I can talk for hours, right? I'm not a real estate expert, like a pundit or anything on that, right? But one of the ones that I find personally easy is where getting in on new builds that have a lengthy closing, and you can invest in the deposit money, somewhere between 5 and 20%. And then flip the property before it closes and not have to tenant the property, as long as it can be assigned and some of the costs are known. And and I'm not sure if that's frowned upon or if that's looks good.
No, I think that's been a great strategy for a long time, especially in a rising market. The reason that what you just described is so sensitive to me is that almost bankrupted our family, right? That's exactly what our father did in 1990.
Okay.
He actually bought a house in Mississauga, off somebody else. It was an assignment he bought. So the guy, the real estate market was so hot. They didn't even have like sales offices, and it was literally just a construction type trailer they were selling out of. He bought the paper off somebody coming out of the trailer.
Wow.
He bought it for $750,000 off somebody else, new construction. So that person bought it, flipped it to our father, who made a profit. The house fell in value before or right around the time of closing. Now I'm forgetting the sequence. But it fell in value $450,000 right as our father was taking possession. So either immediately after or right before, and we were stuck with this thing.
Right.
So but when things are going good, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful because you give your money. There's nothing to do. You don't even have to buy insurance on it. You're not even owning the property. It gets completed. You sell it to somebody else, or you assign it before it's done.
Right.
It's a beautiful way to do real estate. It's just there's some risk to it.
Right.
That someone like yourself, you can handle that risk.
Yeah.
I'm just nervous for someone who maybe doesn't have your financial ability that goes kind of all in on that strategy. And if they do 2 or 3, let's say condos, and then maybe a COVID hits where no one, or a war breaks out that nobody thinks and a liquidity crisis hits and they're caught holding the bag on all these things. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So,
fortunately, right now I'm at I'm not going to do too many more of them, and I have enough that I could make
but
good
you're
on all of it.
Yeah, you're at the
liquidity of it.
You're at the financial situation where you can kind of handle that thing, and that's why I think there's so much nuance to real estate. Because someone can say, I love joint venture deals, and they work out beautifully for them because they fit their emotional profile, like you were alluding to. It fits their financial profile. They're happy. You and I, maybe we're just like, I don't really like it for different reasons. And then the pre-construction, someone would be killing it on pre-construction. And maybe there's someone like me who's like, I don't really like it. Yeah. So real estate, that's why to me, no one can ever say, hey, Glenn, I got the perfect real estate investment for you.
Right.
Because it's so dependent on your financial situation, your stage in life, what your emotional circumstances are. There's so much nuance to this that there's no one answer.
Right.
And it's why people come to us and they're like, what's the best real estate investment, or where's the best place to invest, Tom?
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, without knowing more about you and your life and your needs and your financial background and your financial ability, it's tough to answer that question.
Good. That's a good point.
So,
and I'm getting to the point now where I'm trying to, I'm getting to the emotional point, which, because I constantly measure that weight, right? Is because the financial is kind of binary. Either you can or you can't financially, right? Like you can either know the path to the financial deal and you're going to make it happen. So it's either gonna or not gonna, but the emotional, you got to really measure whether you can handle it emotionally and be happy and not lose sleep and not be worried and drag down your family and your wife's like, I don't want to hear about your mom.
Don't talk to me about that.
And then she's like, how much did you make on that condo? She only wants to hear the good ones, right? And,
my gosh.
Anyways, but it's getting into the bigger, being a partner in a bigger development, right? So
cool.
That's sort of the next thing. But just, in short, just a couple of other things that I learned was you guys had introduced me to the Graybrook, which is like so amazing.
We're fans of them for sure.
Yeah. I'm so thankful to learn about that. Paul had a seminar about whole life insurance.
Oh yeah.
And I got to admit, I already have whole life insurance. I mean, I'm a business owner, so I've had it for a long time. And I understood it in terms of the policy that I had, why I bought it, when I bought it, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's almost sort of at its mature stage where I don't have to fund it anymore. But he introduced me to the Darren, right?
Yeah, Darren Mitchell.
Yeah. And like the light bulbs went off in 19 different directions. And
that was probably one of the few people we've brought in recently over the last few years that everyone just had like light bulb moments.
Oh,
because you're talking about like a high cash value life insurance policy, or leveraging your life insurance policy,
and then using the policy to leverage the future life insurance real estate purchases, right?
Yeah. So we actually, if anyone listening, his book is Be the Bank, if I'm remembering correctly, and we had him on this podcast actually.
Yeah.
So if you look back for Darren Mitchell, that one always gets rave reviews. I remember Nick and I listening the first time actually before we had him on the podcast. I think we did a phone call with him and we hung up going, why? Because we like you, we already had whole life policies,
right?
But we weren't just thinking about them in that manner,
exactly.
And it just kind of your mind explodes with possibilities.
Yeah. And I met 10 years ago. I had met a guy just like Darren to explain me the policy, sold me the policy. I've been paying the policy, but he wasn't Darren. He didn't explain it like Be the Bank, and I mean, it's just like I was just like, oh my god, I wish I'd known that before. And and then Darren's gotten me involved in even I'm later in life now, but even still, it's still a valid. Newer policies I can still get involved with even at my age, right? So I'm so thankful for that.
Awesome.
And then of course
I didn't know Paul had brought him in for a class.
Yeah, there was like a morning seminar kind of thing.
Awesome. Cool.
And Paul's like that guy. Like, don't ever lose him. You know what I mean? Like, that guy said when I said earlier that story, and he's awesome. And and of course he does a lot on crypto and stuff like that, right? And I've enjoyed them. And the funny thing is, like, when I'm in the crypto ones, I'm always have to throttle myself because there's chat things, and they're talking about level ones like Ethereum and Bitcoin and things like that, and some concepts of DeFi, like lending protocols and stuff like that, right? But I mean, I got into Bitcoin.
If you're throwing around these terms, you're going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Just be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful, Glenn. Where are you going? Where are you
I won't go too deep. No. I just want to say, like, I enjoyed the things, and I always learned something. And I can't remember which company it was he had introduced me to, but I did get involved with them as well. I'm not sure if it was Lender or Lendr or whatever, but
Okay, it's probably Ledin.
Ledin, maybe. Yeah,
got
Ledin.
it.
Yeah. And but I have to, not ask these, that annoying guy who asks these questions that he knows no one knows the answer to because he wants to sound smart or whatever. Like, I think I talk about that in the book as well. Like, don't be that guy, right? It's called high nav, high need to add value, right? Where you're asking a question where pretty much nobody knows, and you're just showing off, right? It's really annoying. It's not an endearing quality.
And you were doing that in this
No,
space?
don't.
Don't.
I'm like, don't touch the keyboard, right? Just listen.
Yeah.
Because the stuff I want to, like, the basic, he's talking to the broad audience who's just getting into crypto or learning about it or what have you. But I bought my first Bitcoin in like 2012, something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I once needed a few lines of code changed by a software engineer, so I paid him 14 Bitcoin.
No.
Yeah, 14 Bitcoin. I remember it as much as yesterday. And so I've been involved for a long, long time. And I have this like geek thing where it just kicks in, right? And I go like right overboard. And
So were you able to accumulate and keep some Bitcoin?
Oh yeah. No.
Good,
I definitely accumulated life-changing money, which I've held on to, and to this day, I still have it. I have my Ethereum. I did get, I took a huge loss in the Quadriga fiasco, where the guy had the keys to the software and he died. And nobody knew how to get into the Quadriga exchange, and I lost all my. I am in that class action to try to recover it, but I lost.
Is that the Canadian exchange?
Quadriga CX.
I don't know. There's one big Japanese one that went down. I don't know. I can't remember.
The Quadriga one is unique because he never shared the log. He just didn't share the logins and things to the exchange, and so he was running Quadriga CX from his laptop. And he flew to India or somewhere and died. And of course, it's like, oh no, he's in like Bali.
I remember the story. Yeah.
Right. And
because for a long time, everybody thought he was alive, but had just taken all the money.
Yeah. I don't believe that part of the story, and I am part of the recovery. I filed my claim and I proved on the blockchain my ownership. Right. I lost 80 Ethereum for sure. I can't remember, like 4 Bitcoin, which in today's dollars, it's a lot of money. Right. And it's gone. Like, I don't think I'm ever getting that back, but I might. And then that would be a huge windfall.
So what happened? He took off to India and then no one ever heard from him again?
He died. And
like they found this guy's body?
I don't know if they ever found the body. That's probably maybe one of the things or something. But the story is he died, and now his wife can't get into the software and nobody can get in. And so now they're trying to figure out a way of back ending into the exchange to release, because he's got the private keys, right? Don't have your keys.
I'm sure if they haven't got into that exchange by now, no one's getting into that exchange.
Yeah, and but there is a class action. Action involved in trying to recover whatever they can. So,
Glenn, you're all over the map. You're on everything. Multiple businesses. You've gone down the real estate rabbit hole. You're into this whole crypto stuff.
Yeah, the crypto is like my wife considers it gambling. I'm kind of 50-50 right now with the way the markets are, that maybe I am just gambling, right? And but I find it to be like, when you come home from a hard day at work or whatever, like some people like to play some kind of Xbox game or something like that. I'm not a gamer. I don't do anything like that, but I like to play.
This is your
crypto.
release a little bit. Yeah.
I
don't know, from everything I have a little bit of interest in the monetary system and following money and the history of money. And specifically Bitcoin to me really intrigues me because a lot of the characteristics of Bitcoin remind me of gold. And if gold was the best analog money for 4,000 years, and now we have like a digital form of scarcity, to me, when I map the characteristics against gold, I'm like, wow, this is like a digital representation of gold. in the digital space, and it kind of intrigues me. And then when you see it can be sent around the world and settlement, and it's a bearer instrument, nobody controls it. There's no like board of directors or anyone who can change this monetary system. Yeah. And there are threats to it, of course. There's like different things, countries ban it and stuff, but it feels like whatever you toss at this thing, it just like lives on. Yeah. So it's kind of fascinating that even if you don't believe in it, it's almost like a riddle just kind of studying. And then when you peel back the layers of this thing and see other layers being built on top of it, like the Lightning Network now.
That's amazing.
It's really amazing. Well, one of the guests we recently had, Kevin Rook, on this podcast here, he's streaming his podcast over a podcast app that is riding over Lightning rails. So when you're listening to the podcast, if you listen on the Fountain app, you can say, hey, this is of like, maybe 5 cents equivalent Canadian dollars in Bitcoin. So whatever amount of sats that would be, I don't know, 30 sats or 50 sats, which if you're listening to this, that's a fragment of a Bitcoin. And you can stream it to him like every 5 minutes as a thank you for the content he's putting out. Oh, and I'm like, amazing. When you can digitally stream monetary value and you can programmatically then put this into other applications where somebody does something and they just automatically get this monetary reward. I go, where are we headed? Like if you look at the way we pay people in today's world, usually people get paid twice a month. Yeah, right. Why do they get paid twice a month? Because it's too difficult to pay them.
And too expensive.
And too expensive to run a payroll regularly, never mind every hour. Yeah. But what happens in a few years from now if we're able to just pay people by the hour in real time? Right. Yeah. Like, where does that take us? Like, it feels like that changes things, and it's so big that I don't know what it changes exactly. Like, I can't even articulate it right now, but I'm like, there's something here. There's something here.
Sometimes I wish I could pay people for the hour that they work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole different story. That's a whole different story. And, totally, you're right.
And the one thing about crypto that I always is that I don't really get involved in NFTs, and I do I'm dollar cost averaging it. Like every 2 weeks, I get paid every 2 weeks, right? So every 2 weeks, I do dollar cost average into the L1s, right? Like the level 1 crypto, like Ethereum and Bitcoin, Phantom, and the coins like that, just to accumulate it, right? Not a huge amount of money, and but I don't get involved with the NFTs, but I do get involved with what are called launch pads. Because nowadays, when you have to rationalize, this is, how I sell myself, right? Is that if I'm investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum, I could ultimately be super smart, or I'm gambling and could lose it. All, right? I always lost money when I gambled, right? But
I shouldn't laugh. I'm hearing you say this just laughing. Glenn, it's true. Holy
and
smokes.
I feel that NFTs are I'm not, I believe in them for later, for identifying things that have a value, but as gambling on them now for like the price of an ape or these different kinds of NFTs, right? I just see that as total gambling, right? And so, but the launch pads where you buy into the launch pad, so you'll buy tokens in, BSC pad, ADA pad, all the KSC pad, and you buy tokens on their sort of little exchange. You lock them in, you stake them, and then there's IDOs, I'm not sure what the D stands for, but like basically initial coin offerings, right? And they're only selling out like a few $100,000 worth of the coins, and you're getting in at the strike price of like 2 cents, 1.5 cents, or something like that. And they typically, in the beginning, they do like 10x, 20x, 30x, or what have you. But if you're buying in at the bottom, like at the beginning, you have a much bigger chance of. So if you're going to gamble, I'd rather gamble at zero.
Like, if I'm going to gamble, I'll go big.
Right.
I'm going to get in early.
And because unless you had a huge stake in the pad, with the launch pad, which I don't, you can only buy $20 to $40, maybe up to $100 on any one kind of coin, because there's only 150K, 200K of coins to go around, right? But if they 100x, the problem is they lock the coins in for 6 months. So it's a long-term gamble to see, will they hold their value over time? But if they do, they're not likely to go from 0.015 cents to like 0.001, And so for me, that's the sort of like, roll the dice money that I think. And the other stuff, is just a basic.
I think it has to be the roll the dice money if you're going to do that, because I think the securities, I can't see the SEC like ignoring it completely. I mean, they have so far, But I got to think at some point they come in and say, okay, listen, these are like securities. They're going to have to be regulated differently. But I'm surprised they haven't so far stepped into that whole world.
Yeah. Me too. Well, the XRP lawsuit is going to greatly govern
think maybe
how
decide some of that stuff?
whether they go for the other ones. Because if they're found guilty of being a security or whatever, then it's game on for every other one that they want to go after.
Precedent's been set.
And if it's not guilty, then there'll probably be a deep breath, right? And
fascinating times in that space. We'll have to we'll have to circle back and just laugh.
Yeah.
We'll either laugh at the crypto discussion specifically. We'll either laugh at just like how naive are those guys talking about that stuff, right? I told you that stuff was like look at they were sitting there thinking they were so smart on that whole stuff, but it's definitely fun. And I'm similar to you. I won't go home and start playing some games or something like that. That is a little bit of my release when I have something that kind of intrigues me and it just gets my curiosity going and I want to do a deep dive on it. But Glenn, I really want to thank you, man. Your life's kind of journey is really, really interesting. Like for you to, quit and do what you did at 30 or 29.999, years old, and then go through that ride, and then in your 40s to be faced with starting up from scratch again, and then doing it. And the hustle, the work, the energy, the momentum that you have to create from scratch. Like I know what it's like to create momentum in a business from scratch. It's tough.
It is.
It's a lot of hours. No one understands the amount of time you have to put into that. There's likely going to be sacrifices in other areas of your life to just do that. So, I really respect all the stuff that you've been able to accomplish. Good on you. And to then share it, and then now to put the book. I have one last question for you with the book that you've put together. So thank you for the copy of the book, by the way. Why the title? Never sit in the lobby. 57 winning sales factors to grow a business and build a career selling.
That actually isn't the name I came up with. I had to hire some editors to help me with the editing, and I started with 75,000 words, and when they removed the F word from it, it just dropped to 71,000 words, right? And they also told me that the title didn't have the proper keywords, and so they picked the most appropriate sort of catchy title from one of the lessons in the book of never sit in the lobby.
Got it.
And I never do sit in the lobby. It doesn't matter how long I have to wait for you. I will stand the whole time and I won't touch my phone. And it's just a golden rule. Because when you come out, I'm gonna meet you head on.
Yeah.
And
it's funny. That's how Anthony here got a job working with us here. He came into our lobby in our old office and he just stood there until Nick and I would deal with him.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so that's how I came up with that. And it's a build on if there's just a brief story a quick story I'll tell you is that one of the biggest lessons in the book for me is the lesson you only get forever to make another impression. And so when someone like Anthony, like you said, or myself or whatever, that you're always making an impression, right? So, if you walk by one of your workers, they're maybe your top producer, but they're always like playing backgammon or something on their PC, that will be the impression you build of them, right? And so I always teach my people, like, you always want to be on when you need to be on. So if you hear the front door open and you think it's Tom or Nick walking in, look really busy. Look really freaking busy, right? Every time. And when they walk by, even though it's going to be annoying, ask them a question, right? I'm working on this deal, blah, 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 and whatever. And, always make an impression that you're busy. Always make an impression that you're working. And don't let them catch you like playing around and things like that, right? And that's why I don't stand in the lobby I don't sit in the lobby. And, and I've helped, I helped teach it to my kids and inspire that in them so that they could go on and, they're both in sales now too, right? So
awesome. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And thank you to Rockstar for all of I've explained all the things I got from you guys. It's, the membership, it was infinite return on investment. Yeah. It's so good. And
you're too kind. I mean, I appreciate it. We know I think sometimes we look at what we're doing here at Rockstar and we're like, damn, we could do so much more. When you're critical of yourself. Oh, yeah. So I thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And it's not just buying a rental property and burring it. There's so much more under the covers. And so anyone that's, not sure about it, join and partake in some of the custom classes that are run. And I think, you'll agree.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks for that, Glenn.
Thanks a
And
lot.
so if someone wants to get the book, Never Sit in the Lobby by Glenn Poulos, where do they, Amazon.ca, is that
Amazon,
the best place?
Yeah, you can just type Never Sit in the Lobby in Amazon. It'll come right up. And if you do read it, please leave a review. If hopefully it's a good one.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I have a website, glenpoulos.com. So
GlennPoulos.com. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, go to the show notes of Glenn's episode, and we'll have links to the book and to his website there. So
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thanks a
Glenn.
lot.
Really, pleasure getting to know you better.
Same
Thank
here.
you for
Thanks
doing this.
coming.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having me in. Take care.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.